Hello and welcome everyone to the ANZ Transactive Global Webinar Training Series. My name is James Brown and I'm the Head of Market Management in Transaction Banking at ANZ. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our fourth session in the Transactive Global Training Series, which will focus on the administration aspects in ANZ Transactive Global. But before we kick off, I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and also acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which all of you are joining from today. I pay my respect to elders, past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders on the call today. Now, this is our fourth instalment in our current Transactive Global Training Series, which is designed to provide you, our clients, with the resources to enable you to unlock the full potential of Transactive Global has to offer across its full suite of features, which includes payments, reporting, loans, trade finance, commercial credit cards, insights and FX brought together in a true omni-channel experience. And today we have Heather, who will take us through some great tips and demonstrations covering the administration features within Transactive Global. So if you have any queries as we go, please pop them into chat and we'll endeavour to answer those throughout the session. And post the session, we'll provide access to a recording and also link to additional resources, so please share among your colleagues. And if you enjoy this session and our ones up to now, please remember we have two more sessions in this series with the Economic Pulse on the 8th of February, followed by the 16th of February, where we're going to revisit tricks and tips. So with that, and without any further ado, I'll pass over to Heather to get us kicked off. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. My name is Heather and I'm from the implementation team here in Melbourne. So I'll be taking through the administration section of Transactive Global today. And during the session, I'm going to cover the creation and management of users, roles, account and account group management, division settings, and I'll also touch briefly on panels and confidential data groups. So as mentioned, there is a Q&A open in the chat, so please put in anything that you have, any questions that you have. We will answer them as we go, but if we can't get through to them all, I'll show you where to find the ones that we'll post after the session as well. So you can feel free to log into Transactive and follow along if you like. Just please remember, don't save anything that you don't want to, because we're looking at the administration. So now I will share my full screen content and I'll take you through the demonstration. Okay, so when you log into Transactive, if you are an administrator, you will have the administration option here and you can click into it and you'll see all the sub-menu options. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. If you click on download reports, that's where you will see anything that you've requested to be downloaded, any administration reports. So I'll talk you through the reports later, but we have things like role details, user logons and things like that as well. So the next menu option is the other settings, which are division settings, authorization panels, and confidential data groups. So you may be aware that in Transactive, we do have the ability to hide sensitive payments by using the payroll or salary option, but the confidential data groups actually gives you an extra layer of security where you can hide payments even further. So an example of that might be an executive payroll. You might not want the everyday payroll people to see that. So if you want that, you can create what we call a confidential data group, and you can do that through the other settings. So to create a confidential data group, you just click on New, you give it a name and you give it a description and you submit it. It's as simple as that. It doesn't need a second approval because the approval happens, and I'll show you how to assign it to a user later on as well. So the next part is authorization panels, and in Transactive you have three ways of approving a payment. You can either have one to authorize or two to authorize, which are our standard ways, or if you have a more bespoke requirement, then you can use an authorization panel to do that. It's completely customizable and you can set up and control it yourself. So You might use one if you have, for example, you might have one person who can approve payments by themselves, but if it's any other people, you might want 2 people to approve, or you might want certain people within certain threshold amounts. So that's when you would use panel. So I'll show you how to create one. You can click on new panel, then you give it a name and a description. The currency will default to your currency, your main currency that you have within Transactive. You can change it if you like. Otherwise, it will just be the AUD equivalent. So let's say, for example, you're making a payment in US dollars. It won't stop you from making it. It will just be the AUD equivalent for the threshold amount. So when you get down to the panel rules section, you can either have all accounts or you can have selected accounts. If you choose selected accounts, you'll need to create multiple rules until you've used all the accounts. Otherwise, some accounts won't allow people to approve. For this example, I'll just use all accounts though. So you can enter a threshold amount. I'm going to enter up to $50,000. And I'm happy for any one A to approve by themselves, or any A and B, or any B and B. You can have up to 6 approvers in a panel as well, and you can also fix the order if you like. So you might have one particular user type that you want to always be the final approver, and you can fix it that way. Then you'd like to add a new threshold because you need to at least put it up to the maximum amount of payments that you'll be using. So I'm going to say anything up to the maximum amount we can spend. I would like an approver type A and A, or approver type B and A. And I'll fix this last one. So my final approver needs to be an A. This is a very brief, it's very brief in taking through panels. It is quite detailed. So there is actually a video on panels as well, which I can show you where to find later on if you're interested in using this. And when you're happy with how it's been set up, you can just click on submit. And then it will require approval by a second administrator before you can assign it to a payment type. So as you can see, we've got one approved here. So I would be able to go and assign that to a payment types, which I'll show you now. So the third and final part of the other settings is the division settings. If you have multiple divisions, they will be listed here, but a lot of customers just have one division, so you can just click into it. And here is where you can manage your product settings. So if you want approvals, if you want to enforce approvals for when people create templates, you can tick this. And similar for if they're creating beneficiaries and you want it to be approved, they can tick this box. You may have seen in James's presentation last week about when he was creating payments from file import, and there was that button about disabling beneficiary bank changes from payments created via file import. This is where you can manage it here. So since this one is ticked, if ever anyone uploads a file, you can't go in and modify any beneficiary. You would have to fix the file and re-import it. So it's just another layer of security, and you can manage those settings as you see fit. Down here, we have the authorization matrix, which is how you will be approving your payments. So it's broken down into payment type, and you can set the authorization model per payment type. So it doesn't have to be the same for all payments. So if I click on edit, for BPay, I've got 2 to authorize, and for domestic credit as well. You can also manage it by standard or payroll. So for normal domestic payments, I might want 2 to authorize, but for payroll, I might want it to be a panel approval. And then you can select the approved panels that you've created from the list. A lot of customers set transfers to 1 to authorize because that is a lower risk payment, because it can only go between your own accounts within Transactive Global. So people, to make it easier for themselves, you can set that to 1 to authorize if you like. When you're happy with how the settings are, you can just click save, and it will need to be approved by a second administrator. So the next thing that we have is account group management. Now, this is useful if you have multiple accounts in your Transactive site, and you might have different areas that look after different accounts or different people that manage different accounts. So say, for example, you've got an office in WA and an office in Victoria, and they might manage separate accounts. So rather than going in and assigning the accounts individually to the users, you can actually create account groups here. So if you click on new, you can give it a name and a description. So like I mentioned, I'll just do one for Queensland. And then you click on add, and you select the accounts within the group. So it's just a quicker, easier way to assign multiple accounts to specific users. Once again, once you've submitted that, it will require second approval from another administrator before you can assign it to users. So next we have the account management section. And this is a useful section if you have multiple accounts open in the same entity name and you want to differentiate between the accounts. So you might have one for payroll, one for operations, or whatever it may be. So you can give them a nickname or a short name. And this is also where you can assign accounts to divisions as well. So you click into the account, click on edit, and you can give it whatever short name you would like. So this doesn't need approval. It will take immediate effect, and everyone in the company will see the short name that you've assigned. This is also where you can assign accounts to different divisions if you have multiple divisions. So the next thing that we'll discuss is role management, which cover probably 90% of customer requirements, but there may be times where the role isn't suitable for you and you might want to create your own specific role. So if you want to have a look at what the roles are involved, we've got a name and a brief description as well. But if you want to see exactly what you can and can't do within the role, you can click into it and you'll see all the boxes that have been ticked, and it tells you everything you can do per payment type. Also for templates and payee management and anything else that you might have access to as well. You'll notice that I cannot approve, reject, edit, delete, or do anything with this role, and that's because it is a system role that was created by ANZ. If you want to see a list of users that have that role assigned to them, you can click on this user list icon here, and it will display all of the users that have that role assigned to them. If these roles aren't sufficient and you'd like to create your own role, you just click on new. You give it a name. I would recommend giving it a name of the actual role rather than a person. So as you saw before, it said payroll officer. I'll just keep it at that. And give it a description. And then you can go ahead and tick whichever boxes you would like to apply. So if you want to tick the boxes quickly, you can tick here and it will select everything, and then you can untick as required as well. And when you're happy with that, you click on submit. And again, this will need approval before it can be assigned to any user. So now we have the user management section. So this is where you can create users, you can manage users' access as well. If you've got a lot of users like we do, you can use the filter option and you can search for your user. You can right click on the user and it's got all the actions available to you. So for this user, I can view them, edit them, delete them, I can disable them if they're going on extended leave, for example, and then you can enable them later on. I can generate a password because this is a company managed user. So I created this user in the system, so I will manage this user. If they're an ANZ managed user and they lock out their password, they can either use a self-service function or they can call the customer service center. You wouldn't be able to reset it for them. I can view the audit history and I can run those reports that I mentioned to you before. So the reports that are available in admin, we've got the audit history report. So that details actions that have been made to a user, the administrator who performed the action, and when the action occurred. The user activity report, it shows the user's interactions with the system, including timestamps, IP addresses, the functions and the actions that they took as well. Then you've got the user detail report. So that provides just general information about the users. So the applications they have access to, the roles that's assigned to them, and the permissions, which is the accounts they have access to. And then you've got the user summary report, which is in a CSV format. And that shows, again, the general details, the roles they're entitled to, the last logon, and if they have an authorization group, which I'll discuss in a minute, it will show that as well. We also have the role, I can't remember the name of it, I'll just have a look, the role details report, and that just looks exactly like if I was to click in here. So it shows the matrix there. So if you wanted to print that out, you can. They will appear automatically down the bottom left of your screen, so you can open them straight away. Or if you've logged out and come back into the system, you can go to download reports and retrieve them from there. So in this screen, it works like any other grid screen in Transactive Global. So you've got the filter, as I showed you before, which makes it easy to search for individual users. You can sort it alphabetically. You can right tick on the top and you can tick and untick certain columns. You can resize the columns if you like, and you can rearrange them as well. So I might want the workflow to be here. If you see password, then they're generally being created by your administrators. And if you see security device and password, they would have been created and managed by ANZ. Another handy thing you can do in this screen is you can export it to Excel. So that's quite handy if you're doing user management, if you want to see which users are still accessing the system and you might need to delete some or add other users. It's just an easy way to view that. So if you want to view the access of an existing user, you can locate the user by using the filter, click into them. And you can see all the details there and also the permissions. So if I wanted to change anything, because this is a company managed user, which you can see up here, and if it was ANZ managed, it would say ANZ managed, I can change pretty much everything for this user. If it was an ANZ managed user, then the user details section would be locked down because the email address and phone number is used to reset passwords and things like that. So we can't give you access to change it for ANZ managed users. If you do need to change anything like that, you can submit forms for that. So I can scroll down to the permissions settings. I can see this user has two roles. We have create and approve not own. So that means any payment that this user creates or modifies, they can't approve it themselves, but they can approve ones created or modified by others. And we also have the service request create, which is relating to the digital self-service section. So if I click on the blue icon here, I can see which accounts they have access to for this role. So this person has access to all accounts for direct credit, which is your standard Australian payments. And they've got selected accounts for the OSCO or the NPP payments. As you can see here, I can add accounts manually, or I could add account groups if I'd created them and they've already been approved, then I could use that as well. So you can manage it at a payment level for the individual user. You then have the confidential data groups, like I mentioned before. So I've assigned this X payroll to this individual user, which means that any payment created that has this confidential data group linked to it, this user will be able to see, but other users won't be able to see it, even if they've got access to the account and the payment type. Then you've got the payment purpose. So you've got standard and you've got payroll. So if I select payroll, then any payment that's being created as a salary payment, I will be able to view. But as it stands, this person, they wouldn't be able to see any salary payments at the moment. And then when you scroll down further, you've got the approval discretions. So ANZ does set some default ones, but you're welcome to change them if you like. And again, it's broken down by payment type, and it's got 3 sections. So you've got daily, batch, and transaction. So if you set something as daily, but you don't set anything as batch or transaction, then they will default to the daily amount. So when you're happy with all these settings, you can click Save. And if you've made any changes, once again, it will need to be approved by a second administrator. Just to let you know, even if the user is only a password user or company managed, you can still assign them the all entitlements role, which gives them the ability to approve payments, but they wouldn't be able to do the final approval of payments unless they have a device. So they would need to be ANZ managed before they can do the final approval of payments. You'll also notice down the very bottom, you've got the authorization group. So this only applies to panel approval types. So if you've created a panel and you've assigned it to the payment type, then anyone who's able to authorize payments, you should assign them an authorization group. So from this screen or from the create user screen, you can also create new company managed users. So if the user doesn't need to final approve payments, get a rate for cross-currency payments, or be an administrator, then they can be a company managed user and you can manage them yourself. So to create the user, you just type in the details. It will automatically populate a user ID based on the company name and the first and surname. And this will check our database to see if this user ID already exists. And as you can see, this one is available. You can choose the address from the drop-down list, or you can add a new address if you have one. The mobile number is not mandatory, but you can put it in there if you like. So when you get to the user permissions setting, you have the ability to copy permissions from another user, or you can add the permissions manually. So if there's another user that they need to be set up the same as, it's just quicker and easier to copy their permissions. And again, you can search for the user there. Okay. So as you can see, the exact same roles have come across. And if I want, I can have a look at the permission settings and change them if I need to. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to give this person authorization group B. I can click on submit. It will generate the new user. And then this will require a second approval as well. And once the second administrator approves them, they will be presented with a password that they will need to give to the user. And when they log on for the first time, they'll be prompted to change it. So that's it from the administration menu. I know it was very quick, so I know it's a lot of information. So I'll show you where to find that information on the help menu as well. So if you click on help, you can scroll down to the administration section, which has got everything there. It has videos, which is helpful. So if you wanted to know more about confidential data groups, for example, you can click into other settings, confidential data group, and there's a video there that will explain it in more detail. You've also got more information about authorization panels. We've got a video for panels as well, if you're interested in that. As we mentioned in every session, it's a good idea to save the status page, if you haven't already, to your favorites. because this tells you if Transactive is up and running. If there's any problems with it, you can see it here, and it will tell you what part has an issue and when it will be operational again as well. So it can save you a call to the customer service centre. If you've had a look through the help menu and you can't find the answer that you're looking for, you can always call the customer service centre as well. They have a lot of knowledge and they're very willing to assist you. And to get in touch with them, you can click on the contact button. You choose your jurisdiction and your inquiry type, and it will give you a one-time phone number and a one-time access code. So if you dial that number and the access code, you will get straight through to the correct option, and you won't need to be identified because you will come through identified to them. So I will just show you where to register for the next session if you're interested. If you go back into the help menu, you can type in webinar and it will come up with register for an upcoming webinar session. So as you can see, the next one is on the 8th of February, and that's for Economic Pulse. So if you click here, you can register. And as I mentioned before, if you want to see the previous webinars, we've recorded them, we've saved them here. And we've also put the questions and answers that came up through the session as well. So if we couldn't get to yours today, we will post them here later on as well. So that's it from me. Hopefully we did manage to answer all your questions. If we didn't, we will be getting to them. If you do have time and if you'd like to give some feedback, that would be really appreciated. Hope you learned something. Thanks for joining.